Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on social media. My name is Andrea Lillo, and I'm the executive editor of Designers Today. And I'm so happy you joined us this afternoon because it's not going to only be a great conversation on social media, but it's a kickoff to our Designer Playbook series, which is going to be a monthly educational series that will look at issues affecting the interior design industry. So what better way to start off than talk about social media? So we have a great group of panelists today who will share their insights. So before we get started, I'm going to ask my panelists to briefly introduce themselves and we'll go around the screen. Toma, if you want to start.
Hi, I'm Toma Clark-Haynes. I am CEO of the Antiques Diva & Co. and founder of the Republic of Toma. And I'm American, but I live in Venice, Italy. But I'm coming to you today from New York, live from New York.
Well, welcome, thank you. And Dawn, can you introduce yourself?
Sure, Andrea. Hi, I'm Dawn Brinson. I'm the VP of Strategic Marketing for a company called Media Matters. We're based in North Carolina, but a global marketing and public relations firm for any kind of creative business related to the home industry.
Wonderful, thank you. And Melissa.
My name is Melissa Galt. I am a 30-year interior designer residentially out of Atlanta, who for the last 15 years has been coaching and mentoring designers in their business and marketing.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining us today to talk about social media. So to get started, Toma, I'm going to start with you. So during COVID, you posted a lot about how you were, really raw stories about being alone in Italy, but you coupled that with beautiful images and design references. So can you talk a little bit about how post-COVID, how your social strategy has continued to connect you to your business and how it's kind of positioned you to grow even more?
It's so interesting because when COVID happened, I was in the epicenter. I live in Venice, Italy. The Veneto was outside of China, was where everything began with lockdowns and shutdowns. And so we were first in the shutdowns. And I will say there was a part of me that just from a social perspective felt like it was important to share what was happening because it was evident this was going to be spreading beyond where we were. But I want to back up actually in answering this question. I want to back up because about 3 years before the pandemic, I was sitting with Linda Holt. She's a designer out of Boston. And Linda said to me, she said something. She says, "I'm so sorry about your house fire." And I said, "Thank you. I really appreciate that." And I made a passing comment and she says, "Oh, I didn't know your husband was having chemotherapy." And I said, "Yeah, it's been a really difficult time." And then she said something else. And I said, "Oh, my mother-in-law had passed away." And she said, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." And Linda was, and we went through a series of very unfortunate events. And she said, "Toma, I had no idea everything you were dealing with." She's like, you have this picture perfect life. And I have a beautiful life. Like I'm very, very blessed. I've been blessed in this world. But she said it to me. And I realized if I wasn't transparent, people wouldn't know me. And none of us are one-dimensional. And so often we put forward on social media a certain image. I'm the Antiques Diva. Diva's in my brand name. And I do play a bit of a diva at times. But the reality is I'm not a diva. And so Linda had really planted something in me in saying, "Hey, wait, I don't know you as well as I thought I did." And it made me aware of the need to be transparent. And when the pandemic hit, I was in lockdown. I was all alone living, and the lockdown in Italy was severe. I mean, you were not allowed to leave the apartment. So you were allowed to go out of the apartment once a day for groceries, 250 meters from your house. That's 1/8 of a mile. And you had to have a police certificate for leaving the house. So for 3 months, I literally only saw the people at the grocery store. And the grocery store was empty besides the cashiers. so I truly was in solitary confinement for 3 months, and you learn a lot about yourself in that period. Coinciding at um, the same time of this, I had a divorce going on. I had a 3-year tax audit going on, and I was in solitary confinement. So you can imagine, and add to the fact that the pandemic hits, we lose 90% of our business in 3 days for the year, like literally 90% of the income for the year. And so I was sitting there alone, watching my world crashing down around me. And there was one thing I had control of, and it was me and my messaging. And my team, I have a great team. As a company pre-pandemic, we were 31 people. We're 12 now, and I'm happy to say we have not only survived, but I think we have thrived in the past couple of years because of a lot of hard decisions we've made. But when the pandemic hit, my team, they all said, okay, maybe we can sell advance tours for when this is over. Like, everybody gave me great ideas. And I realized that the one thing I had control over every single day was showing up where I was. This is who I am. This is all I have left at this moment. Everything was kind of being stripped away from the world that I had created. And this was what I had left. I had the ability to show up as me, and it saved my business. It kept us from dying a slow death to random people giving us jobs that in the past I probably would have never taken, that I realized, okay, we can do this job for someone. It helped me expand my business so that people in my team could pay their electric bill. And it was a really terrifying and empowering thing, because what I have learned is that shame hides in dark places. And so often we won't speak about the crappy things that happen in life because we don't want other people to know about the bad things. You just want to put forward your good side. And when you don't talk about things, you can often feel shame about them. And I realized I do not need to feel shame about any of these things. There's a whole series of things outside of my control. And I'm not the only one going through this. I'm not the only person in the world who's gotten divorced. I'm not the only person in the world who's had a husband who's had cancer. I'm not the only person in the world who was in lockdown or had a tax audit. And I realized when I talked transparently about what was going on in my life, while at the same time also, bad things happen, but tons of fabulous things happen. So at the same time, concurrently talking about all the amazing, beautiful experiences I'm having, I realized people connected with me, that they weren't connecting with me as a business, they were connecting with me as a person. And ultimately, people do business with people. And it honestly, by me sharing the only thing I had left during the pandemic, by just literally, I kept a diary my entire life. The only different thing I did was I opened my diary up for all of my followers to read. And like I said, it was mortifying at times, but it was also what kept me connected to a world outside of the four walls of my apartment. And the result of which was, first of all, I think every single day during lockdown, I never had less than 100 private messages of people sharing their own experiences that they had, that saying, thank you for saying this because I didn't have the words myself to say it. I didn't know how to say it. Thank you for telling my story. But then also people who just said, I've always admired you, but I admire you more now in this situation, knowing where you're coming from. Mm-hmm. The result post-pandemic has been our clients feel more connected with us. Our team is stronger. Our team overall, we changed the way we ran the company. It became, I've always been fortunate that my vision, I've led with a vision and I had a great team behind me. Now I have a vision and my team kept the business alive during the pandemic by everyone contributing. And no, we're stronger and better than we ever were before, is what I can say. And it was hard as double hockey sticks.
That's wonderful. And I think that, that personal connection over technology is so important. And you really harness that. So that's really great. So Melissa, COVID really ushered in a new era of online engagement for anyone who had a phone. How do you think that really underscores the need for a sound social media strategy? And then additionally, did you bring along your designer clients? Is like social media something you have included in your coaching content?
Oh, I definitely include it. I had a lot of resistance. There are a lot of designers who resist social media. And I have moved to a place now where I frame it as what it truly is, which is a search engine. And it's far more likely that you're going to be found there first, and then they'll go to your website than the other way around. Because if we're in a social setting, if we're at a party, if we're at a networking event, if we're at the grocery store and we run into somebody and they're saying, oh, I'm thinking about getting this remodel done. I'm thinking about, I need a new living room or something. We're going to pull up our phone and we're not going to go to Google and type in a website. We're going to go to Instagram and pull up someone's profile. So when I frame it that way, it seems to land a little bit more receptively. And I also share the piece of it that involves stories, and that they need to bring themselves and their lives and their values and their vulnerabilities to the table, because design is an extremely intimate business. We have to know about the nightstand, and does it need a drawer? How big a drawer? Without asking what goes in the drawer. Is there a cabinet that's necessary? We know what goes in our clients' bathrooms. We know what goes in their closets. This is secret stuff. And if we aren't willing to pull back our own kimono to at least some degree and really bring some vulnerability forth, why should they share all of that with us? I've had a number of clients that rock social media because they're so real, they're so raw. They do things that I'm just like, oh, you didn't just say that, but they get calls every week saying, oh my gosh, we've been following your stories on Instagram. We feel like we know you. We'd like to work with you. It is a know, like, and trust factor that you're building. And when it's always perfect and pretty, it's not real.
Right.
And when your feed is filled with nothing but beautiful images, and then I can, scroll slightly and see 10 other feeds that look a heck of a lot like that, there's no personality, there's no sense of reality. And that really is what makes the difference. So what I tell designers is, it's not your talent that you're being hired for. It's your personality and your connectability, your magnetism, and your magnetism can be brought forth online if you're willing to do that. It's really, they get scared because they think that they're shouting to the world. And I'm like, no. When you climb online, when you're doing a post, whether it's from your phone or whether it's from your laptop, and my gens over the 45 and 50 mark are all on their laptop doing it. I said, it's a one-to-one conversation with your ideal client right here at the corner of the screen, but the whole world is listening. So if you make it a one-to-one conversation, it's so much simpler. It's not this big hyped up, what am I going to say? I'm like, well, hang on a minute. If you had your ideal client sitting there right across the table from you, and you were talking about the picture that you've got right here, what would you share with them? You'd lean in and you'd say, oh, my favorite part about this project, and I think we're going to do something similar with yours, is this tile. I scoured the city for this particular tile, and let me tell you how they make it, and da-da-da-da-da. And when you do that, you create an intimate moment in a very non-intimate space, which is social media. But then you've got the world watching and listening and going, oh, I want to participate in that conversation. I want to hear more. Then you create the tell me more moments. And that's what makes the difference. And that's what I teach. Social media is a fundamental part of running any successful business today. It doesn't matter whether you are starting out or whether you're at the top luxury end. I've been on a panel in Manhattan. I'm going to be on a similar panel in Chicago coming up about luxury marketing for designers. And it's all about social media. And we bring a luxury designer in who talks about They are on social media and why they are there and the opportunities that they're able to get there that they wouldn't get any other way. So there's a place where designers also want to outsource. And I'm like, well, hang on. Until you can be cloned, you can't outsource your education, your years of experience, your expertise, your knowledge of what's in that photo. You can't outsource that. And by the time you've sent all the images to your outsourcer, and then you've taken the time to send all of your thoughts on each image, you might as well have done it yourself. Mm. It can be done in a very simple, streamlined methodology. It does involve some scheduling, but the problem with scheduling becomes then you forget the engagement piece. So you have to be willing to be up there live, say 30 minutes a day. I'm not telling you it's 2 and 3 hours. I don't want it to consume your life, but it is a free tool for starters. So why would you not use it? It increases your visibility. It enhances your credibility. And those two factors combined lead to profitability. So it's a really important set of tools. And it does need to be done strategically, but it needs to be done with personality and a sense of humor. Because if you can make people laugh, you've attracted them. They'll come back for more. If you can make them cry, they'll come back for more. Mm. If you can make them feel something and you're not just wah, 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 they'll come back for more.
Wonderful. Yeah, so it's really that connection, just being human and showing it's not all pretty pictures, but you have your own personality, and that's so important for sure. And I want to remind our audience, if you have any, I don't think I brought it up, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A and we will get to those at the end. But for now, I'm going to move on to Dawn. So you work with your clients and on a whole range of social platforms, a whole, TikTok, Facebook, all that stuff. Is there one or two things people always get wrong about social media?
Yes, usually, whether or not it's an individual or whether or not it's a full-on design firm. One of the things that I think, takes a little bit of time is really understanding, and this goes back to both what Melissa and Tama have said, is that you really need to understand who you are as a firm, who you are as a human being. And both of them use the term transparency, and I think we'll talk a lot more about transparency going forward. The early days of social media were not about transparency whatsoever. It was about, how can we make these 9 images on Instagram look absolutely perfect and gorgeous and, overly photoshopped to the point that things have become so homogenous now. It's very easy. I know when you're probably out online, you're scrolling very quickly. And if you see things that just look the same or don't have any depth to them, then you keep on going. You go, oh, pretty, keep on going. And you don't interact with it in any way. You don't stop and let it absorb into your soul. And so that's one thing that I think is missing for a lot of people, is they think, all right, I just have to start putting things up. I'm going to talk out of the other side of my mouth later on when we're talking about getting started. But I do think it really takes a little bit of time to just think, where can I be special? What is unique about me? What is different about what I say? And it might be, to Melissa's point, that you really like to use humor in what you do, or to Tama's point, she got just incredibly open and raw about things. You may want to, have your dog in it. Whatever is sort of special and personal to you, I think is super important. The other thing I think is not understanding that this is a channel of communication. We are communicating with one another. That means it goes back and forth. It's not an ad. So please don't use it like a series of ads or advertorials for your company. I'm sorry, to be very honest, that just gets boring, and nobody hires anyone who's a bore. So really think about meeting your ideal client where they happen to be on whatever social platform it is, or whether it's offline or a combination of all of them. But essentially, you are telling them a story of a space, a story of you, a story of your company. You're engaging with them as if you're standing around in a group at a cocktail party. And if all you're doing is saying, oh, look at this pretty tile. Oh, look at this. Isn't this lovely? People aren't going to pay much attention to you. But if you engage with them in a genuine way, in a storied kind of way that makes it interesting for you and them, then people will respond to you. And the same is true on all of these social platforms. The only difference is there's a screen between you and them. And that's really nothing. That's just a technological construct. So those would be the things that I would say, really invest a little bit of time when you're sitting down and having those quiet moments in your head to think about that and then get started.
Wonderful, thank you. So I'm curious, there's so many different age groups and life stages and lifestyles that people just gravitate towards different social platforms. Can each of you talk about which platform you prefer, or do you pick the platform depending on the audience you want to reach? Kama, do you want to start?
Yeah, so it's interesting because we get incredible engagement with Facebook. And we used to get, I would say 3 years ago, the majority of our clients were coming in through Facebook. Right now, the majority of our clients are coming in through Instagram. They come in through DM. So I have two Instagram pages. I have Republic of Kama, which is the overarching brand. And then I have the Antique Steva page. And every day in the stories on the Antique Steva page, we have a strategy where we have DM to purchase. And it's a very simple strategy. It's an image of an antique item located someplace in Europe that's for sale. Someone DMs us to find out the price and if they want to add it to their container or ship it separately. And that seriously has been the simplest strategy for engagement, because one, by putting up this image, maybe 6 images a day on the Antique Steva page, we know who's looking at filling a container at a given moment. We know who is looking at buying internationally, buying antiques, which gives us some insight into who we should be engaging with. So it gives us a little bit more insight of saying, oh, this is who we need to be talking more with. And, oh, by the way, it's where the queries and the conversation starts. The reality is, with what we do at the Antique Steva & Co., we do global sourcing. So we help people either on one-on-one in-person antique buying tours. We will source for people when they don't have time to come overseas. And we do an antique dealer training program to help basically fast track people into becoming antique dealers or to business consulting for their antiques business if they need it. But with these services, what I need to engage in a one-on-one way with people. And what I found out is if I can get on the phone with someone to answer their questions, we have a client. And it's, so my entire social media strategy with the Antique Steva is to get people on the phone. With the Republic of Kama, as CEO of the company, when someone's working with us, they're probably going to need, if they're going to fill a container, they're going to spend 100,000, maybe 150,000. Often if they're shopping at a fair, you have to send funds in advance so that you have funds on site on the day to buy, because the fairs, you're picking up inventory. The fairs are opening at 8, closing at 12, and they're being picked up by noon. So you have to have money on account. And one of the reasons that I felt it's important for me to be just my face to be visible, that you know how to get a hold of me. I'm everywhere. You know where I am. If you're going to be transferring $100,000 to a stranger in Europe, like that can sound pretty sketchy. It's like, I don't know that I want to do that. And I want them to know I am everywhere. If you transfer me $100,000, I can't run away with your $100,000. And so a large part of me showing up as me as an individual is to say, hey, I'm the CEO of this company. I'm trustworthy. We've separated out my personal message with the antiques message to attract different audiences. But Instagram, hands down, has been our biggest source of clients in the last 2 years.
Wonderful. Okay. Do you want me to talk about what platforms you prefer to reach out to your artists?
Sorry, was that for me?
No, I'm sorry. That's either, I'm sorry, Dawn or Melissa, if you want to talk about what platforms you like to, you prefer to reach your audiences. Either of you?
I mean, I actually do a lot old school through email marketing. I'm on Instagram more as my preferred platform. My clients are on Insta and on Facebook, a few are on TikTok, but my best clients are not doing a lot on social media, or they've got a team member of their firm, or they've outsourced it. They are in the thick of their businesses. So what I have found for me on Instagram and on Facebook both is my high flyers are not there. They're not actively there. They are leading their business. They are immersed in being creative with their clients and those pieces, and they've got somebody else handling their social media. Now, often it's not necessarily being well handled, and we have discussions around that and how it can be improved. But even the designers that are really active on it, many of them are not focused enough on the meat of what matters in their business. They're distracted by social media. So that becomes a huge sort of challenge. I don't want somebody just on social media to be on social media. It needs to be strategic and well thought out and mapped and planned. Instead of just this, oh, I get notifications all the time. And, you know, I get nervous when somebody responds too quickly. There was a designer recently who's a very high flyer, whose response times on LinkedIn were nanosecond. And I realized that if they are that fast on LinkedIn, they are probably equally fast on other platforms, which means she is allowing that to distract her, stretch her day out, and force her into a place of multitasking and not getting enough concrete design work completed. So I look at all these different pieces. I'm on all the platforms. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm now on TikTok because we're repurposing the content from IG. I'm on LinkedIn. I downed my Twitter at 60,000 followers because I hadn't used it in 2 or 3 years. And I was like, I just don't even want to mess with this. I pioneered with these way back, Facebook and LinkedIn. I was late to Instagram because I kept thinking, oh, it's not going to last. It's a flash in the pan. Oops. So I do find the interaction is very different on Insta. I like the fast, quick, go. The Facebook wanting me to hang out for 20 minutes like it's a backyard barbecue. I can't imagine anything I want to do less. Just not my style. So I get up there a bit. I have a group up there. Anybody who's in my group watching this, I have been negligent, my deepest apologies. I am working on a schedule to change that. I love live engagement, and Insta makes it really easy. And despite the fact that they're owned by Facebook, Facebook's lives now are cumbersome for me. So it's just interesting. It's like Instagram is still kind of the new, fresh little child that's fun to play with, whereas Facebook's kind of grown up and gotten a bit stodgy for me. And they're all necessary because they're search engines.
Right. Interesting. Okay. Do you do IG lives?
I've done a ton of IG lives. When the pandemic hit, I took to Facebook and IG both, and I was simulcasting 4 to 5 days a week. It was insane. And they were running an hour at a time, and everybody would sit there and watch me. And I'm like this, they have no place else to go. So, but then that content, I turned that into my vault along with a lot of additional content. And I still have designers saying to me, 3 years later, that training was amazing, Melissa. And, through the beginning parts of the training, I'm like, hey, Susan, great to have you with us. And hey, Tom, so glad you made it. And, some of them don't mind that. Others are like, well, if you just hadn't welcomed everybody, I'm like, sorry, that's who I am.
Right.
I'm very inclusive. I want you to feel like I'm acknowledging you. I see you, even though there's a screen between us. So I think lives are great. Traffic in that has died significantly because everybody's back to business. And it's been crazy the last 2 years.
Right, right. So Dawn, what about you? What platforms do you prefer?
Well, personally, I prefer Instagram. But one of the things that we talk about with our clients is, again, sort of figuring out where you love to be and also where your clients are. If you're using this as a way to communicate with people, you have to communicate where they are. So I am not a proponent of necessarily being absolutely everywhere if you don't have to, because I feel like so many people feel like that's drudgery. That's a real pull down. Now Tama can do it because she has 24 hours in every minute, apparently. So, it's one of those things where she's got the ability to do that. But others really, let's start where it's right for you and where it's right for your clients. And I think because we're in such a visual medium, Insta feels comfortable for a lot of us. And so that works well. When it's appropriate for things to be automated so that you can auto share certain things over to Facebook or even over to Twitter, we look at that, but we evaluate whether or not that's appropriate for each and every client that we have. One of the interesting things that we are seeing a rise in again is LinkedIn. Especially our designer firms are seeing that as they post news or opinions or thoughts, or they re-engage with another post on LinkedIn, they're getting a lot of feedback because many of their ideal clients are also business people. They are also on LinkedIn. They are following for business purposes as well as for personal purposes. And we're seeing a resurgence of that being an interesting platform, again, for connection. It's not necessarily sharing projects, but it can certainly be used to its advantage as well. So select the platforms that are right for you and for your clients, and then find the kind of messaging that's right for those particular platforms. And you'll be able to make inroads a lot faster than if it's just scattershot. We don't want to.
Right. You give a strategy behind it.
Absolutely. A little bit of a plan. Let us not even scare people with the word strategy. Sometimes I believe in that word. It's even in the title of on my business card. But let's have an idea of what we want to do. Let's have a little checklist of things we want to do.
That seems better. Yeah, exactly. So we had a question come in. I thought I would just bring it up so we can answer it live. Is there a benefit to having separate accounts for your business and personal life? Design is my personal passion and a big part of my life. So I'm assuming she's talking about Instagram. So would you recommend having separate accounts? Is there a benefit to that, or should it be?
I don't recommend it because I think it's hard enough to keep up with one, and I want your personal side coming through. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you need to be judicious in not going political and not going religious. But really and truly, if you keep a separate one, you're going to be busy sharing all those nuggets that belong in your stories on your personal feed. And that's what is going to connect you to clients, because that's where they see who you are as a 360-degree person instead of just 180 degrees.
Right.
And so I really encourage my clients to stop the personal and just let's bring it on into the business.
Right. And she's saying it's Instagram. So go ahead.
Yeah.
So what I was going to say is, when I was in the middle of my divorce, I didn't know if I would keep the company Antiques Diva. And it was a really big concern. I really thought I was losing my company. And before the divorce, my lawyer said, separate out Antiques Diva from Republic of Tama. And I took my lawyer's advice and I made the decision so that there would be two separate brands in case I lost the separate Instagram page. And it was the hardest decision I have made from a social media perspective, because I feel like the Antiques Diva page, so the Republic of Tama page is where we have the majority of our followers. The Antiques Diva page, we have significantly less followers because it's a newer account. But I feel that the Antiques Diva page doesn't reflect me as a person. Like, I don't have the same connection with it. And so I have that emotional struggle of, does this represent us? It does represent the product. And I go back and forth all the time. And I can't say that I would have made this decision for any other reason, but now we have followers there that I don't want to lose. So right. If I were to not have extenuating circumstances, I would have kept everything in one channel. Okay. I think also for growing followers, it's made it more difficult because you're growing followers in two places. So even if you're posting, you're still, you're spreading yourself too thin, and I really don't have 24 hours in every 2 minutes. So
very true. And she says she designs her personal passion. So I assume it's easy to keep those together in one. So, and Melissa, you had kind of touched on this earlier. Social media takes a lot of time. And posts have to be impactful and beautiful and actionable. And meanwhile, we also have our offline tasks that we have to do every day. So how do each of you handle the time challenges of social media, or how do you advise your clients?
Okay. I have a process that I teach that involves creating buckets, aka digital file folders full of content. And as designers, we are so blessed to have this vast number of content folders that we can create. And when you take the time to create those in advance and then set up what you want your grid to look like, and you can schedule those pieces out and then go in and take some time in creating the captions, because there needs to be a level of engagement and personality there. Somebody else can do your hashtagging for you. Somebody else could even schedule the whole thing out. But then you need to commit some time every day to popping up and engaging and responding to people who've seen the post and reaching out to colleagues, reaching out to clients. I have designers look at me and go, I'm supposed to connect to my clients on Instagram, on Facebook? Really? I'm like, yes, you are. Okay. That's another channel of communication. And one of the things we have to learn when we start with any new client is, what is our client's preferred method of communication? And there are clients who are very social media savvy, and that's an easier way to reach them than going through email. If you need a response, you might need to DM them and say, hey, just sent you an email, need your opinion, need your input, need your feedback. That's how you reach them. So it's very important that the engagement is there. I always tell my designers, it's not about how many, it's about how hot they are. I'd rather you had 200 followers that knew you well, knew you inside, outside, loved you to pieces, than 2,000, or goodness forbid, 20,000 that have really no clue who you are and no real connection to you. Mm-hmm. 200 will earn you far more when they know you, love you, trust you, than the 2,000 or 20,000 that don't. So it's not a numbers thing. You have to let go of the vanity of numbers.
Mm-hmm. Melissa, you mentioned one thing that is so very true. And it's really about, as I like to say, creative inspiration doesn't happen every minute of every day. We all know that if you are down to the wire and you're thinking, I have to put a post up because I said I was going to put a post up today. What am I going to do? That causes immense stress. That creates something where you feel like you're not giving your best shot at it. And so the ability to, when you have some time, just start gathering. When you're feeling inspired, pull all of that in, let that come, and really create a well or a repository of things that then you can sit down and say, oh, I'd like to post this here. I'm going to post this one here. Let's put this one here. And that in no way inhibits you from also doing things on the fly. When the inspiration comes to you, and something happens and you want to add something to your stories or you want to add something to your grid, you absolutely can. But now you're covered with those other posts that are already ready when you're actually spending all morning taking calls, trying to figure out, why you can't get something delivered. Well, if that's not a creativity killer, I don't know what would be. So let's go ahead and start absorbing things and then setting them out so that when you're ready, it's already sitting there ready to go for you. And you can release that stress of, oh, Jiminy Crickets, I have to do this again and I have to stop. And now I don't know what my expediter is doing and, all of those other things. So to me, that is just super important when you can appreciate the rhythm of inspiration and creativity and really get into the flow of it. I have a little bit of a different opinion about other people, obviously posting for you. I think that there are people who may work with you, who have your brand voice, who know you as well as you practically know yourself sometimes, kind of a what would Andrea do situation, who might be able to take some of that off of you, whether or not even in the beginning, it's just writing the captions in preparation for approval for you. And so I'm always saying, who can help you with this? It's not always a how. Oftentimes it's a who. And so look around to see who can be your advocate for you, who can be your time manager for you. And oftentimes you'll figure that out. And the other thing is, don't discount the other people in your firm or around you, your partners, your vendors, your suppliers. You can use them on social media as well. And it becomes a wonderful collaboration. Don't feel like you have to do everything yourself. You don't have to figure out everything yourself. You don't have to, envision every single post. Let them help you. Let you help them as well. And I think that some of the the strictures that we put around ourselves with social will start to fall away.
Interesting.
One of the most successful things we've done on social media have been our Instagram lives that we did just after lockdown. And what we did was, my team in all the various countries, and as a company, we're in 16 countries. So my team in the various countries, they would go out. I would sit in my living room. I'm in Margaret's living room at the moment, but I would sit in my living room at home in Venice, usually with a glass of Prosecco. And my colleague would go out in the Paris flea market with their phone, and it was rubbish filming. She was bouncing around. This was not high cinema. This was walking through the Paris flea market, showing we were learning. We got much better as time went on. But my team went out on the ground so they're walking through the Paris flea market, and going back to this word we started with, transparency. We were saying, so I would sit there and I would say, oh, tell me about this painting over there. Oh, so she'd tell me about it. How much is it? Tell me about the lamp. How much is that? Oh, that's interesting. How much is that? And people started seeing the prices of what things were in Paris or the south of France or in England or in Bangkok. And we barely sold on those Instagram lives. Occasionally we'd get a sale or two, but really, we were not making money on those Instagram lives. And my team, they were out there, they weren't getting paid. If no one was buying, they weren't getting paid. And so they were dedicating their time to go out, because what we realized was, because we had started putting the transparency in not only the process, I would explain the process, but really in them seeing the prices and seeing the objects that were available in a way we had never shown it before. What it meant was, people suddenly were thinking, one, they were getting to travel vicariously in a time when the borders were closed, but Two, they were seeing, oh, I never thought it was financially possible to shop in Paris. And suddenly they're seeing, oh my goodness, this pair of lamps is only 600 euro. Or that, I would have assumed that that would have been, 3,000 and it's actually 1,500. And so it started putting some transparency in the pricing of antiques in Europe. And that transparency transpired into more clients for us that we hadn't tapped into before, because suddenly people who didn't know they could afford to shop in Europe were realizing, wow, I actually can afford to do this.
I love that. You're on the street almost, and you get to be in Paris without being in Paris. That's great. But another thing you brought up I thought was interesting was when she was first starting to film, and the film was like kind of crazy, and she's all over the place. The video. I think sometimes people are afraid to make that first step, but obviously you need to do something like video, and just you'll get better and better the more you do it. So I think that's always overcome that fear of taking the first step. Yeah. When they say that the journey of 1,000 miles is taking one step at a time or something. So that was a great point too.
The phrase I keep thinking throughout this whole conversation, Axel Verwert's term wabi-sabi that he uses all the time. I'm like, wabi-sabi in design is to be perfectly imperfect. Like, honestly, that's what I think we all are doing is wabi-sabi social media, that we're talking about showing ourselves up in that perfectly imperfect way.
Right. I love that. Wabi-sabi social media. That's great.
And Hama, it's true. Andrea, excuse me for interrupting, but this is probably a critical point, especially for designers who really want things to be so beautifully finished and gorgeous. And that's a great aspiration to have. But in consumer studies of social media, one of the things that we found was that you are given a ton of credit and a ton of leeway if you will just get out there and try it. Yeah. It's fine to make a mistake. It's fine to goof up. It's fine to evolve and learn. You are given a great deal of credit and a great deal of leeway for that. Where you get dinged is if you hold back trying to make it better and better and better to the point of being as near perfect as we can make anything before you come out. The problem is going to be, we're on to something else. Everybody else will have done what you're trying to do. And now you're essentially, unfortunately, a bit of an afterthought. And it's so inauthentically perfect that it's no longer engaging. So if I were going to say anything, if it was going to be my one tip time, it would be just be brave. Go out there and try it. If you don't like it later on, there is such a thing as archiving your posts. You don't have to show them. You can eventually take them down as you get better and better and better. But please, just try it.
Right, take that step. Interesting. So before we started the webinar, we all kind of talking about the, hopefully no one will ever come across this, but hacking. And so I wanted to bring it up because it's such a depressing, when you think as a designer, you spend so much time. We've talked about how much time it takes to do these posts. You build up your followers, you're engaging with people, you're engaging with your clients, and then you're hacked. I mean, there's really no question behind it. I just thought, does anyone have any comments or any advice or good stories?
So, Andrea, the thing about hacking is anything social media driven is rented real estate. So you really want to move your followers onto a list so you can engage with them beyond. And that if you do get hacked, you can bring them back and say, hey, I got hacked. Just leaving them up there is never a good idea. At any moment, any of these platforms can decide for whatever random reason that they don't like you and you've done something egregious, even though you did absolutely nothing at all, and shut you down. And Facebook has done this to people that had done nothing at all, shut them down at 50,000 fans, friends. I've lost track of what they're all called these days. But you've got to move them. So you want to have an opt-in, a juicy lead gen, something that will attract them so you can capture their contact separately, and then they become an actual community for you as opposed to just rented real estate. And that makes a big difference. Updating your password at least quarterly and ideally monthly I know it's a pain in the behind. I get that. But really and truly, the hackers are just malicious in most cases. They get their joy and their jollies out of ruining somebody else's something. It may not even be monetary for them. It's just about wrecking. And that's what drives them. So it's very hard to protect yourself otherwise. I have one colleague, he's not in design, he's an artist, but he has a really great handle and he has been hacked routinely. And I talked to him recently, I said, Randall, let's just change your handle. Let's just change your handle because that handle is too hot. They want that handle. Right. And it's crazy, but that's what's happening. So it's also about being smart. And when you get any kind of DM or text message with a link in it, verify with the source through another channel that that's legit. Don't just click it, even if it says, saw this and thought of you. Mm-hmm. Can't tell you how many of those I've gotten, and I hit delete on every single one. And then my friend will come back to me 3 days later and say, oh, I got hacked. I hope you didn't click anything. I said, no, I did not. No, I did not. So you want to be vigilant about your privacy out there. Don't go clicking on links that you don't know where they came from. Mm-hmm. I don't care who's telling you. It could be your best friend sending you that. In fact, it usually is going to be your best friend sending you that because they got hacked. So be very careful. But changing your password routinely really does help.
Right. And having a long password, I think they recommend like
you need a complicated password, yeah. You know, one that has uppercase and lowercase and weird symbols and numbers in it. One that would take you 10 minutes poking it into the phone if you needed to do it that way.
No, I agree. I like the idea of thinking of it as rented real estate because
it is rented real estate.
Yes, it's not technically. I mean, yours, like you could lose it at any moment. Yeah. Like you said, that's a great tip.
Yeah, you want to move them off. And there's one more tip that I'm going to riff off of with Dawn here is there is a delete button. I would not put up my first story until I made sure that there was a delete button that I could access in case it went out too quickly and was a train wreck. So everything is, in Dawn's case, she said archivable. I actually say deletable because you can go in and delete posts. You can go in and delete stories. You know, fear holds you back from success. It doesn't generally hold you back from failure.
Right.
So you're better off failing forward fast delivers more success in the long run than not being willing to take that step.
That's really great. Well, I was curious, does anyone have any like one piece of advice that you would give in regards to a social strategy? Anything that you think people should do or not do?
I say tell your story. You know, oftentimes we feel like when we're having to post things, you know, it's fine occasionally to post a lovely picture of some Delft vases and your caption is Rhapsody in Blue. Okay. But if you do that every day, every way, people don't know how to engage with you. They don't know you. Use some long form posting sometimes too. Tell people why you think it's interesting. What was the flub up about it? Again, just go back to that communication, authenticity, transparency, and a little bit of bravery.
Very good. Anyone else?
Okay, so today on IG specifically, if you are not using Reels and video, you are not being seen. You are not visible because IG is in a lockdown battle with TikTok. And TikTok became popular because they went from static image to video, to Reels. So that really does matter now. You have got to use Reels and video far more often. I've gone almost exclusively to Reels. Now I'm full transparency. I have my file folders of images and I have a lovely provider out of Belgium who is putting together my Reels for me. I know my limits and I know I do not have the patience to teach myself how to do Reels. I know that. Now, I am lucky because I had created all my other content in my Insta and it's been there for a while. So she goes into my IGTVs. She goes into my previous content. She pulls those nuggets up. She sends the reels to me for approval. Then once I've approved, I caption them and I hashtag them. I'm a bit of a geek around hashtags. So I kind of like doing that stuff.
Right.
But I do that piece of it. And then I'll get in and I'll engage and I share it in stories and I do those sort of pieces. So I have largely outsourced a big piece of that. It has taken me probably the length of time I've been on Insta. I can't remember how long it's been. I've never been able to do that effectively before. So to your point, Dawn, I don't want to say that nobody can do it, but finding Nina was, I mean, almost, I'm going to say a decade long, but it hasn't been a decade. It's probably been a 6-year journey. And it was because I had so much of me already out there to be mined. I believe in mining the gold in who you are. And that's what she's done for me. And that has been a gift. It really has been. And I will be getting up there more with lives because I do love to do lives. And I'm going to teach myself the basics of reels somehow.
So
go ahead.
Yeah, just for closing, what I would say, I actually pulled something up on my phone I wanted to read. So I've been in the States the last month and a half because my stepmother passed away, and we were finally able to come and also spread my mother's ashes because I wasn't able to come home last year due to lockdown. And one of the things, so I've obviously got the feeling of family mom in my head because I've been off work for a month and a half, which has been amazing to have that luxury. But one of the things that my mom always said, and it's a poem by Henry David Thoreau, and this poem hung in our house. And there's a quote in it that I want to read you, and it says, it's about marching to the beat of a different drummer. And it says, if a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it's because he hears a different drummer. Let him step to the music which he hears, however measured or far away. And what I know is that we all have the beat of our own drum. But what I also know is that there are others out there who like the sound of your beat. And if you beat your own drum, if you beat your drum, if you be you, if you show up as yourself, there are going to be people who like the sound of your drum. And so that's really, I think, my last advice is beat your own drum, because the people who want to hear it are going to follow you. And the people who don't like the sound of your drum, honestly, they're not your audience. They're not your followers. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to. You want to attract the people who are attracted to you. Like, I don't think it's necessary to force yourself into someone who's not interested into what you're selling. Yeah. Attract the people who come to you naturally. And the only way you can do that is by showing up as yourself.
Wonderful. Well, on that note, thank you, the panelists, for such a great conversation about social media. I think next time, if we do this again, we should do it in Venice at Tama's house. And
yes.
I'd be on board of that. But
you're all welcome. Prosecco all around.
Thank you to our attendees for watching. Hope you learned a lot more about social media, and now we're all ready to get on and schedule those posts and be more committed to showing our personality through social. So thank you again, Melissa, Tama, and Dawn, for your time. And thank you for watching.
Thank you.